I don't know about you, but I have found the teachers' actions around the country standing up not just for themselves, but for their students to be one of the most encouraging developments in quite a while. Now, before we go to our next guest, I will remind you that we pre-record this program. So if you're listening on Saturday, watching on Monday, events in Arizona, where we're going next, may have changed since then. And I would also say that normally, at this time, at the time that we're recording, my understanding is that our next guest would probably be in first or second period teaching 7th or 8th grade math to students at Bogle Junior High School in Chandler, Arizona. Instead, because the teachers have walked out, she is available to speak with us now, and we welcome now Keli McDaid. So first of all, Keli, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I also wanted to ask, before we begin, have you ever done anything like this before? Have you ever been involved in any kind of mass political action or whatever you want to call it before? Or is this something new for you?
Well, this isn't my first protest. I did take my daughter to the Women's March this year, but something along the lines of, 75,000 people, I think is what they said, showed up on Thursday is totally brand new to me. And I never expected a response like this for the teachers of Arizona.
Well, yeah, you guys have been getting a tremendous amount of support. And we've seen this, by the way, first of all, the national polling of support for teachers is incredibly favorable. And we've also seen, in states that people talk about as if they're, red states or what have you, we've also seen that a lot of people support their teachers. From your perspective, Keli, how did this come about? How did the teachers wind up deciding to walk out? From your perspective, how did you first hear about it? How did you get brought into it? How did you start becoming active in it?
It really started with the movement in West Virginia. I think the entire nation was watching the West Virginia teachers' protests. And it started very small here. It started with Arizona Teachers United starting a Facebook page, bringing people in onto this Facebook page and saying, we can do something like this. And then it got bigger. And it started, that Arizona Teachers United page turned into Arizona Educators United to really include everybody. And from there, it just grew and grew. And I think I jumped in at the end of March. And when we had the first rally down at the Capitol, I believe it was March 28th. And that rally only drew about 1,000 people. We started wearing red shirts on Wednesday, and then it turned into wear red shirts every Wednesday. And it was really just people realizing we've had enough of our education funding being cut, and we're tired of this. And just everybody coming together and raising their voices together. It was pretty incredible to watch from March until now, what is it? May 2nd, May 3rd, that, we got 75,000 teachers to walk out of their classrooms and protest with us down at the Capitol. So it all started watching West Virginia and then jumping onto that Facebook group, starting these little community outreach events that we would put on at different sites. And it grew from there. It was amazing.
Well, it really is. And I've got to tell you, Keli, that my mom was a teacher, a middle school teacher. My aunt was a teacher, gym and math, high school and junior high for 30 years. I taught, but in a private school, and I was a substitute in the public school system in California. I never got my teaching certificate because I was kind of like undisciplined, really, but I should have. But so I feel, really close to teachers, and I feel that I know what it's like to go in a classroom every day. And, even when I was doing it, certainly when my mother was doing it, my aunt, you didn't have the kind of, it was tough enough, but they've cut budgets and cut budgets. It's not just the teachers' pay is inadequate for the responsibility of teachers, but from what I hear, you don't even have basic supplies anymore. You have to go out of pocket to buy certain things. That's right? True, isn't it?
It is true. I am very lucky to be in a district that has been very fiscally responsible throughout the entire recession, and also live in a district that it's a fairly wealthy area, because we live next to places where, like Intel and Orbital and Microchip, that a lot of the parents that send their kids to our schools work at these corporations. But if you look at like rural school districts, their buildings are falling apart. Their textbooks are 20 years old. They don't have those basic supplies. And I came from a school like that, where I was in downtown Mesa. The school just did not have a lot of supplies. We would end up buying pencils halfway through the year because we ran out of pencils that we were supplied, things like that. So I happen to be very fortunate to work in a district where they do take very good care of its teachers, but most of the schools in the state aren't so lucky, aren't so fortunate. And it's happened because the state cut education funding by 34% a decade ago, and that was the largest cut in the entire country, and we've never gotten back from that 34% education funding cut.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrible, because I can guess that you were not exactly rolling in Benjamins before that 34% cut, so I can only imagine how terrible it's been since then. So, okay, so you guys saw what happened in West Virginia. You guys have a number of school districts around the state that are really underfunded. You know, not too many of them have some do, but not too many have the good fortune that your district does. So you guys are underpaid and deserve to be paid for your work. I can't think of too many things more important than training the next generation. So you guys went out. You had 75,000 people show up at the last demonstration. What about people, just whether it's people you talk to, whether it's parents at the school, whether it's people you meet in the shopping center when you're wearing red, or at the grocery store, whatever. What's the kind of reaction you're getting from folks around Arizona?
Overwhelming support. Absolutely. It's been overwhelming support. And I know the longer this goes on, the more parents tend to be frustrated. We've seen the Purple for Parents group pop up in the last day or two and start protesting on street corners. And that's to be expected. And I know my husband, he works at a corporation, and he's told me that they all know that his wife is a teacher and is involved in all of these protests, and they're venting their frustrations to him. And so what I've heard, though, when I go shopping, when I'm out and about, I have Red for Ed painted on my car, and mostly it's people saying, stay strong, stay united, keep up this fight. You need to work for what you guys deserve and what you guys need for your classrooms. So, other than a comment here or there, like go back to work or do your jobs, it's been really overwhelming in support of teachers.
Well, and I would say that by going out there and demanding better funding for education, you are doing your jobs, because you're trying to educate the children of Arizona. So as we record this, Keli, the legislature has passed just a couple hours ago, funding. And I was reading about it before we recorded, and obviously you will know more by the time this airs, but it seems to me like some school districts will be able to get a 20% raise for teachers. Some others may not, because it's based on averages. And you're a math teacher, so you understand averages. But so teachers, school districts with higher teacher pay may not be able to achieve a 20% increase, and so on. But what about funding for education? Have they allocated what you guys need?
Well, I was hearing there was going to be, I believe, $371 million in additional school funding that schools can use as they see fit. The problem with that is, yes, the teacher raises are great, but it doesn't cover everybody. You know, we have paraprofessionals and teacher aides in our classroom, and they're getting basically minimum wage and no benefits. So there's really no way to retain these paraprofessionals that are an absolute necessity in some classrooms. And the other problem with this funding and the funding bill, honestly, is a lot of schools, especially the rural ones, like I talked about earlier, haven't been able to maintain buildings, haven't been able to maintain, you know, basic supplies like desks and chairs. And so the problem is they're going to be playing catch up with all of that. The funding that they've lost over the 10 years to maintain things like, you know, I've heard about water mains breaking and not being repaired for years, or crumbling buildings, or, you know, just getting in those supplies that you need to run a classroom. It's a lot of the funding is going to go there first. And what it seems like is whatever's left over is going to be allocated towards, you know, people's paychecks. And that's really frustrating because, again, we're going to have that inability to pay a wage that keeps people in our classrooms, keeps the high quality educators in our classrooms.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to keep watching, and you know, hopefully, this is the start of a changing in the political tide where legislators can no longer get away with underfunding education. But we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, you guys are doing a fantastic job. We're with you all the way over here at the 0 hour. So we'll keep following this story. And Keli McDaid, Arizona. 8th and 7th grade math teacher. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.